Hey guys, Michael here again. So I'm back with another video about my Ortur Laser Master 3. I've added a base to it and I want to show some samples of things it can do. Stick with me. Let's get to it. So I have my laser here off to the side. If you notice, I have this piece of wood here. This is actually a base I made to actually set the engraver on top of. So here's a closer look at the base. I took a piece of MDF that I've had laying around. I believe this is 3/4 inch. And I took some wooden tags that I had left over from something else. And I cut a hole in them so that it will fit the base of my Ortur Laser Master 3. And then off to the right here, you'll see I have some Velcro screwed down. That's actually for wire and hose management. So let me put my Laser Master 3 on here. Again, I'm just going to line up the feet to the holes here. And there we go. So over here off to the right, let me see if I can show you. Here is my hose and wire management. I just Velcroed on here just to kind of keep them from flopping around. Just like so. I actually saw another gentleman drill holes in the side of this frame and use zip ties for the wire, but I didn't want to go to that extreme just yet, but I might do that. I don't know. All right, so I did leave this loose. This is actually an air line. This is going to an air pump. I did not tie this in at the last point because this has to be able to go all the way up to the front, and so you need to keep this loose here. As you can see, I've already got a grid on here. The grid was, I pulled this off of a Facebook group and loaded it into Lightburn, hit start, and it did everything by itself. It was worked out perfectly. It's 400 by 400, showing you exactly where the material needs to be at. I've already messed it up, as you can see. I actually cut a circle and didn't even think about it not having aluminum or something on the base there. So I've already burned a hole in my pretty grid down there at the bottom. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but I've already added a personality to my Laser Master 3. I gave him some eyes. And yeah, I like to kind of watch him go back and forth. So that's how I set up my Laser Master 3 on this board. That way I can move it around and put it away when I'm actually doing other stuff on my workbench here. So I actually have some stuff I want to share with you. I want to test out some cutting, some engraving, and share that with you today. This came with a bunch of material that you can use. If you saw my first video, it came with a bunch of test material. However, I'm going to test it with things I use on a daily basis here, except for a couple of things. So two things. One is a cork trivet. So Halloween, Christmas, all that's coming around the corner. I've been toying with these. These are some old ones and engraving on these. I'm really happy with how they've come out so far. So I'm going to show you one here. And then this is an aluminum, almost a business card, but really, really thin. And I want to engrave on this for you. And then I have some other boards that I commonly use here in my shop. I want to show you, engraving and cutting. And let's see if it'll cut this right here. I don't think it will. I'm not expecting it to, honestly. But yeah, so let's move on over to Lightburn, and I have already prepared the files. And let's set this up and do some testing. All right, so I have my Lightburn file here set up. I am still completely new to this, but I do have some things I want to test out here that I have set up. And what I can tell you is in Lightburn, you can have a ton of different layers, and you can turn individual layers on and off, but just by showing them. You can tell it to actually output to the machine or not, and you can tell it to turn the air assist on and off. There's pretty cool features on here. You can move the laser around, but let me focus on this part right here, and we're going to go through the motions and test a couple of these things that we have up here. Okay, so up in Lightburn, I want to turn off everything. What I'm going to try to do is actually engrave on the aluminum first. So what I want to make sure is everything is turned off that I don't want to see, and everything is turned off that I don't want to actually send to the actual engraver. All right, so I have my piece of aluminum in here. I have it taped down in the corners because there is a fan blowing from here. So it's actually going to move this lightweight piece of aluminum. The fan is just to keep the laser cool as it's running. So, and I know I'm not going to engrave up here in the corner, so I did go ahead and tape it down like that. Over here in Lightburn, I had the rectangle drawn, the size of the card. I'm actually going to delete that rectangle when I'm done, but I'm going to use that to do the framing to see if it's actually going to fit in there. When you frame, you just come over here to frame and press frame. But if you want to slow it down, underneath the move tab, you can control the speed. The lower the number, the slower it goes. Also, if you need to move the laser head out of the way, you can use this drive button to move it up and down, left and right, send it back to home. The distance that it moves every time you click is controlled by this distance button right here. So let me do the framing and see if 1,000 millimeters per minute is too fast or too slow. And let's see where that card is. All right, so that framing looked really good. I'm going to delete this rectangle. Hit delete. So let's send it to the engraver and see what happens. To start, you just hit the start button. Okay, I totally made a mistake. I forgot to tell it to fill instead of drawing a line. Inside Lightburn, I'm going to change it from line to fill, and that should fill in the object. And yeah, everything looks okay. Let's start and try it again. Okay, so while that engraves, I'm going to hop over here and prep the next thing. So what I'm going to do is actually engrave on a piece of birch plywood. I use this a lot in my smaller projects, and I'm going to test this in two different ways. One, I'm going to do a normal engraving, and number two, I'm going to engrave it as fast as this thing will go. I'm not sure if you noticed in the specs of this thing, but this thing can go up to 20,000 millimeters per minute. That's pretty impressive for a small 10-watt engraver. Let me get this ready over here on Lightburn, and when this finishes, I'll put this inside my grid and test out the engraving. So I didn't center the text very well. This actually came out really, really good on this test piece of aluminum. Make sure you pick fill instead of line if you want to engrave. So now that I'm ready to go with my plywood here, my 1/4-inch plywood, I'm going to put it in place. So I have both layers turned on, outputs turned on, shown is turned on, air assist is turned off. Let's start and see what happens. So while we're waiting on this, I do want to point out that this actually has a lot of smoke coming off of this, especially when it's cutting. They do make enclosures for the Laser Master 3. I don't have one. I can make my own, and I might do that. But yeah, you want to make sure you have well ventilated area, because there's no way to direct this smoke and keep it from actually just filling up a room. So you want to make sure you're in a ventilated area or have a cover with an exhaust fan on there. Also, I do want to point out, make sure you wear your goggles. I have these off right now. I'm not wearing them because I'm actually not focused and not looking at the laser. Normally, if I'm in the shop working, I'm actually going to look down at the laser and keep an eye on it. I'm not doing it, and I can't even see the laser from here. But I do wear these when I'm in here in the shop, and I keep it on my little stand that I made there. Looks like we're almost done. Let's zoom in and see what 20,000 millimeters per minute looks like. So again, that's 7,500 millimeters per minute. Let that thing finish up, and it's going to jump over to 20,000. So as you can see, there is a huge difference between 7,500 and 20,000. That's millimeters per minute. This one's much darker because it stays on the wood longer. It's slower, whereas the 20,000 zips along. Okay, so now we're going to get to the cutting test of this. I don't actually have a honeycomb for this. What I do have is a piece of homemade honeycomb that I don't recommend you use unless you're in a well-ventilated area upwind, because you're not supposed to use this material. This piece of mesh is a galvanized mesh that I got from Home Depot, and I cut down and made a little wooden frame of it and put some magnets on the side. And this is a piece of Galvalume, which is actually used for metal roofing. It's about 55% aluminum, or maybe 75, and it's got some zinc in there. So the zinc is the problem. It shouldn't have stuff like that when you're actually engraving on it. However, this is what I have. This is what I'm actually going to use for right now. I'm in a ventilated garage. I don't have an issue with being upwind of this when it's actually blowing out there. So I have Lightburn set up already. I'm going to cut a 1-inch circle on this same 1/4-inch piece of birch plywood. It's going to be 1-inch circle. It's going to make 2 passes, and it's going to be at 80% power and 120 millimeters per second. Let's hit start. And again, this is going to do 2 passes. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's actually smoke coming out from underneath it. That's a good sign. That means the laser is actually cutting through it. However, I need to do 2 passes, because what I found was 1 pass, it does a good job, but it always leaves pieces behind. Doing a 2nd pass actually takes care of the rest of it. All right, so I'm gonna lift this thing up and show you how well it cut. So it actually cut really good, but I made a mistake. I forgot to turn on my air assist. And that's why I have a little bit of charring, as you can see there. That charring actually goes away when you use the air assist. For my next cut, I'll be sure to turn that on. All right, I'm gonna skip the poplar because I know the poplar is gonna cut. I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the 1-inch pine. Put the kickstand down, adjust it, and put the kickstand up. One circle is gonna be 1 pass. The other circle is gonna be 2 passes. They are both being cut at 120 millimeters per minute, which is the same speed I cut the 1/4-inch birch with. Let's start and see what happens. I'm not expecting this to cut all the way through. However, I am curious to see what this looks like. So in case you were wondering, yes, I forgot my air assist yet again. However, I jumped over there and did plug it in, so we should be good to go. Actually, while we're waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and make another one and set this in the 3 passes. All right, let me send my 3-pass job to it. As you can see, there's no burn marks at all, except for right there at the front. That's where I forgot to turn the air assist on initially. And looking at the back, it did not go all the way through. I was not expecting it to go all the way through. Let me take this over to the bandsaw, cut across, and let's see how well it actually penetrated into this 1-inch piece of pine. And here you have the results of that cut test. We have 1 pass, it went down about 8 millimeters. 2 passes at 9 millimeters. And 3 passes, it made it all the way down to about 11 millimeters deep. And this is 80% power. I'm not even running it at 100%. However, I do want to keep it at 80% instead of 100%, just to extend the life of the laser. Let me show you one more project. I'm actually going to engrave on a piece of cork. This is a cork trivet. This is an older one that we have, and that's why it's kind of stained. The settings I'm using are 20,000 millimeters per minute at 70% power, 1 pass. And that's the settings recommended by Ortur on their Excel file. Let's do a test framing and let's see how well it looks. Okay, so the framing looks good. Looks like I'm ready to go. Let's hit start and see what happens. So I think Jack came out really well on that cork trivet. So another thing you can do with this is you don't have to bring the material to it. You could bring this to the material. Earlier today, I had to score, in other words, draw a line on some boards so that I can cut them out on the bandsaw and my jigsaw. Well, I thought instead of just cutting squares and putting them in here and use this to trace it, I would take this off my base and put it on top of my 1/2 inch board. And well, as you can see here, it actually worked really well. So I picked it up and I put it on there. I kind of moved the LaserMaster 3 around to where it fits the board. I got in Lightburn and I told it to draw a line, and I drew 3 different objects on there and I was able to cut them out. So it's really handy. So not only do you have to, you can bring material to it, but you can bring this to the material. So that's it for today. If you don't mind, please like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Also, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, do so. I'm going to actually show smaller clips of doing different projects, like something that I'm not going to make a big production of in YouTube. I'm actually going to probably put in a reel or in a post on my Instagram, like this guy. He's going up on there tonight. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.